Roger Stone here. Your dollars are losing ground, but gold isn't. American Sovereign Bullion helps you protect your wealth through real, tangible assets. Through their nationwide wholesaler network, you get some of the best pricing on gold and silver delivered straight to your door. Since 1912, the U.S. dollar has lost 97% of its purchasing power. Meanwhile, gold continues to prove its strength. So call 844-272-2428. That's 844-272-2428. Or visit dyingdollar.com to request your free gold and silver guide. That's dyingdollar.com.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Excuse me, taxi.
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
It's the left versus the right. Right here on WABC 77, your favorite radio station. And, of course, it wouldn't be the left versus the right unless Jake Novak is here. But before we even get into, because I thought this week, it's not even the left versus the right, Jake. It's everybody versus everybody else. But we're going to get into that in a second. Meanwhile, right here on WABC, we are celebrating the 250th anniversary of this country with some little short radio snippets that we're going to be playing. This was Jake's idea, and so I'm sure he'll get a big raise in his next paycheck, and with it, he'll take me out to dinner. But before that time, Jake, why don't you just tell the listeners some of the great events that we're going to focus on when we celebrate the 250th anniversary and their meaning to the fact that we can even have this anniversary.
Well, that's very kind of you to ask me about it, Governor. So it won't, by the way, it won't just be on WABC. It'll be on all the affiliates for this station, all the worldwide news network broadcasts as well. And we're calling it Freedom 250, the decisions that made America. For those of you old enough like me to remember 1976 and how incredibly wonderful, I thought, the bicentennial coverage was that particular year. It was everywhere. It was ubiquitous. It was in children's cartoons. The old American flags were everywhere. A lot of history, but it was just basically moments in history. There was really no analysis of it, and that's fine.
And now that you bring it up, I remember that.
Yeah.
And I would say most people, in fact, I can't think of anyone who refuted that we would have this bicentennial anniversary and all these different events, and it didn't break down on party lines or criticisms about what color the flag was or some of the, really crazy stuff that goes on now. And so I guess it will really be a good time to hearken back to when Americans, not just 250 years ago, knew how to celebrate our anniversaries, but even 50 years ago.
Yeah, listen, it was a different country 50 years ago, but it was not a happy Pollyanna country either. We were just coming out of Watergate and the Vietnam War and all that kind of stuff. So the fact that the country was able to just focus on the celebration, I thought was really important, and I know we can do it again. But that leads me to explain these 30-second and 1-minute snippets that you'll be hearing every day, maybe even on the hour here and there, are not just dates in history, which I think are fine. It's fine to say, hey, this is the date that Washington crossed the Delaware, this is the date of the signing. That's all fine. But I'm doing something a little bit different, a quick analysis. So I'm looking at the decisions that were made, people who made decisions, individuals like, whether it's an Abraham Lincoln or someone you may not even know, who made a very important decision that led to something generally very positive for this country or something that certainly couldn't be forgotten. So, and it goes from things like things that presidents did to things that regular people maybe in business did, maybe someone in entertainment and culture. It's going to cover all these things. And in addition to those 1 minute and 30-second snippets that you'll hear throughout the days, again, maybe even on the hour, Sunday nights on many of these stations, certainly WABC, during my 7 to 8 p.m. show that I do, I will always dedicate at least one segment and sometimes an entire show to fleshing out one of those 30-second or 1-minute pieces. So, for example, this Sunday night, I'm going to flesh out a 30-second piece that's going to start running probably today, Saturday, or something like that, where I talk about the day that John F. Kennedy, when he was president, his father had a stroke. His father had a stroke in December of 1961. And up until that point, his father had been calling him dozens of times a day, telling him what to do, not letting JFK really do what he needed to do unbothered. And because of that stroke, Joseph P. Kennedy never spoke again. He wasn't able to talk ever again. And that changed the JFK presidency. His decisions that happened after that are decidedly different from his first year in office. So that's that's the kind of stuff I'm going to be doing. Just quick notes that maybe maybe you never learned in school, but you should because they were very impactful.
Sons very much crave their father's approval and generally listen to their fathers and have great deal of respect and caring. This is the one of the two people that helped bring you into the world. And I remember when I was governor, I thought I was going to get these same Joe Kennedy calls. My father made me call him.
Oh, yeah, that's good. That's
good. I can't get the budget passed on time. Well, sounds like you have a problem. Well, yeah, Dad, but do you have a solution? Yeah. So I hope JFK is smiling down on the fact that I was able to eventually pass these budgets without having to whine or call my father. But Joe Kennedy, he was a nasty, and then 3 letters. He really thought he was running the country even when he was basically committing all types of illegal activity. And he's just lucky that he had a son that became president.
Yeah, we're lucky as a nation, and I think I'll do a separate one on this so that there's some context. We're lucky as a nation that FDR had Joseph P. Kennedy's number. He had his number. He knew exactly what he was about. He placated him by making him the U.S. ambassador to the Court of St. James, which is a very fancy way of saying he's the ambassador to the United Kingdom, and hoped to get him out of his hair. Like, just get over there. And you'll have a lot of fun with that as an Irish American being the ambassador to, the British royalty.
Right.
It's kind of like he basically hoped to tantalize him with that and get him out of his hair.
And this was Roosevelt's first choice. His second choice would have been the South Pole.
Yeah, that's right. Would have rather sent him there. Nevertheless, Joseph P. Kennedy did try to push Roosevelt away from aligning against the Nazis. Joseph P. Kennedy had a lot of investments in Nazi Germany, and he didn't want the United States to be their enemy. Now, eventually, he got with the program.
Yeah,
course.
But I did. What you just said, I did not know that.
Yeah, he eventually got with the program, but that was one of the reasons why Roosevelt got rid of him. Roosevelt and Churchill had a lot in common. They both had to get rid of people to make sure that the war effort against the Nazis could move forward properly. Churchill had to get rid of that useless King Edward VIII, who was a Nazi sympathizer and also just a general, worthless, also a 3-letter word. Got rid of him. He gave him this governorship in the Bahamas, some kind of job just to get rid of him. And so FDR had that in mind too. But Joseph P. Kennedy, he really thought he was getting his revenge for having been exiled during the FDR years and the FDR Democrats. And he gets his son in there. And I think that a couple of the decisions that Kennedy was able to move forward for the better of the country, especially being, for one thing, the establishment of the Navy SEALs, the big 1963 tax cut, which, of course, he had to spend a lot of 1962 pushing for. I think he would have had a much harder time focusing on those goals if his father was still bothering him. We're still bothering him. And that didn't happen. He was able to get out of his father's influence in that way, and I think it was for the better of the country, in my opinion.
I agree completely. And if you read about JFK extensively, and there are no identifications, I submit that a lot of people would think he was a Republican president.
Yeah, read his inaugural address. It's a sharp-tongued whipping of the Soviets. It's rough. He was a very, one of my pet peeves was when I was a senior in college, the movie JFK came out with Oliver Stone. And there's a lot to be questioned about the JFK assassination. I am not one of those people saying, I think we know all the answers. I don't think we do. But the premise of Oliver Stone is that JFK was basically some kind of pacifist who never would have gotten us into more of a war with Vietnam, and that's why he was killed. That's where it falls apart. I'm sorry, there's no evidence of that. JFK was a staunch anti-communist, was interested in military intervention when necessary. The idea that he was just going to pull us all out of Vietnam, unlike what LBJ did, there's just no evidence of that. So again, that's, of course, I think our culture, our entertainment culture, very often gives us a wrong impression. By the way, sometimes that has a great power to give us good, real impressions about what really happened. But I think that movie in particular really gives people the wrong impression about JFK and his presidency.
So Jake, are you ready?
Yeah.
I actually know Oliver Stone.
Oh, yeah.
I've known him for about 10 years, off and on.
Yeah.
We have a mutual friend.
Okay.
So we, happened to, go to visit our mutual friend at the same time some point. And I think if he remade JFK, he would do it exactly the way he did it the first time. He really believes that JFK would have saved the free world and that nothing else would have occurred had an assassin's bullet escaped him in 1963. And he's compelled by this. And I think that the only reason that he hasn't tried to make sort of a sequel or something like that is that no one would give him the money for it. That's what I believe.
Well, I have a question for you because this to me is a troubling part of JFK's record, and it seems like that every year that passes, I'm more favorable for, in my opinion, of his presidency. But I'd like to get your opinion on JFK's two steps when it comes to civil rights. I think he talked a good game, but you really could argue that he didn't really make the efforts to make real changes on the ground that, of course, LBJ did. And that may have been not only because LBJ felt he needed it to get the left wing of the Democrat Party to nominate him to be president in his own right for the full term, but also because LBJ had experience with this already. He had already passed a civil rights bill in 1957 when he was majority leader. So how do you feel about JFK's civil rights record and when it really comes down to it?
I think JFK was your favorite speaker when, if you were one of the civil rights groups, and he would come and, bring the house down because he was an excellent speaker, and he'd take questions, and he was quick. He could answer questions, in a moment. And then as the people are driving home, they're thinking, but what did he do for civil rights? Like, he didn't mention anything he actually did for civil rights. And I also remember, and I think we might have talked about this a little last week, when I read that when Martin Luther King went to visit President Johnson, he thought he was going to get a lot of pushback or, yes, thank you, Dr. King, the door is on the left, on the way out, that kind of thing. But that Johnson opened the conversation saying, a lot of civil rights needs to occur, and you're going to get a lot of it done, and I'm going to get a lot of it done because it should be done by Southerners, and that they had a little pact between them that if there was any trouble, they would talk it out. But JFK, we have it today. The people who are great at speaking to audiences and great at making representations of what they're going to do and how peaceful it's going to be and all these different things. And you don't have to look further than the Gracie Mansion for that to be happening today, because nothing really gets accomplished. It seems that, and I know I'm straying a little bit, but this administration's whole philosophy is to tear down anything positive that anyone else is doing.
This reminds me of Barack Obama as well. I think it was Congressman Emanuel Cleaver, who said during the Obama presidency that considering his record and how things are going in the African-American community, if he were a white president, we would be picketing the White House every single day. Do you feel the same way? I mean, did Obama also talk a good game and not actually deliver for the black community?
I not only felt that, but in his first a couple of years, I was governor, and we would do these things, and we would, just want a little quote from the president, anything from the White House, nothing, and until Obama had reached some sort of agreement with some people, and when they finally called, it was to ask me not to run for re-election. So I haven't forgotten that. Right. But on those issues, yes, he could leave audiences, barely able to breathe because of the strength of his oratory. But when he got back home, he just went back to sleep and got up and became, what he had been. And I am frankly surprised that more people haven't talked about that, after the fact. This
is one of the things that frustrates me the most about politics and really our culture. we are living in a culture now, and in a political culture as well, where words are really valued over actions. And I think that social media has made this worse. I understand that you can't always just show your resume. People, I'm in the communications business, so I'm certainly happy that people who can communicate clearly, and I think I communicate clearly and in an interesting way, have sway. But I wouldn't feel comfortable saying any of the things I say, especially the things I say with conviction, if I didn't feel I had the record to back it up. And it's so sad to me that we really continue to do this. We continue to applaud people for how well they speak, which is certainly an important part of the job. The people need to understand why things are being done. People need to be motivated. We were just talking about FDR. FDR, it's really good that he was a good speaker, and it's really good he did the fireside chats because he took over as president an incredibly isolationist country, and he needed every one of those years in office before December 7th, 1941, to mobilize the country and to make it clear why we needed to get involved in World War II. So, words are important. But, of course, he had the actions to back it up. He did Lend-Lease. He started to rebuild the military. We weren't caught with our pants down on December 7th. We were with the attack on Pearl Harbor, but we had already a military that was somewhat ready to go, and it didn't take long to get into the field. But I'm just really very, very disappointed that our culture continues to celebrate people who talk a particular game, and then you look at their particular actions. And this goes beyond politics. I'm a father of 2 daughters, and granted, I'm not a woman, but when I see things like, for example, the Real Housewives show, and the way that the creator of that show, Andy Cohen, is celebrated by women all over the country because he says these cute things and they like to hear him schmooze. He's an incredible misogynist, and his record shows it. Have you seen any of these shows? Have you watched them? They portray women in the most denigrating physical and emotional light that I've ever seen in my life. If anyone else were running those particular programs,
there'd be a boycott.
There'd be a huge boycott.
Now,
that's a feeling I have.
What
I just
network
hate that.
is carrying this, Jake?
I think it's on Bravo. It's it's on Bravo. Yeah, we got the nod. Yeah, all the Real Housewives shows. They in addition to the anti-Italian American stereotypes. Thank God, from my own point of view, that the Real Housewives thing they wanted to do on Long Island with a lot of Jewish characters didn't fly because that was filled with a lot of anti-Semitic stuff. And I think that there are some anti-black tropes running through the Real Housewives of Atlanta as well. But it's women. The men on the shows are sometimes kind of schmendricks, at worst they're sort of out of it, but they're never portrayed in that horrible, negative, seedy, disgusting light that the women are. And the way that they make them up on these shows, the makeup and the outfits are over the top. They look like
rivalry, the competition.
Yeah, it's misogyny. It really is.
Yeah, and it's interesting that it's been allowed to go on. To this point.
And it's interesting that this Andy Cohen, who is a guy who doesn't like women. I'm sorry. And the fact that he's gay is not important. There's plenty of straight men who don't really like women either or respect them, as we know. Graham Plattner. We know that as a fact, and we should talk about that next. But the thing is, my friends, look, especially if you have young daughters, this is not helping the whole self-esteem movement in this country at all. And I think that that's overblown too. But this kind of stuff, actions being valued less than words, is not a society I want to live in. But that seems to be what we're doing right now, and I don't like it.
Well stated, Jake. We're going to take a little time out for our commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the rifts within the Republican Party, the Republicans that voted against President Trump, some of his ideas, why that is generally the case in the Democratic Party as well. But first, we're going to take a little time out for a commercial break, and we'll be back with Graham Plattner.